Amid this tense situation, the US deploys the USS Liberty, a spy ship equipped with the very latest in intelligence-gathering technology. On the third day of the war, the Pentagon orders all US naval ships to stay 120 miles away from the site of the fighting. But the Liberty fails to leave the area. Israeli aircraft circle above the ship. This photo was taken by a sailor on board the Liberty. The crew is certain that their friends, the Israelis, recognize them. But instead, unmarked aircraft fire at the Liberty and even drop napalm bombs repeatedly. A photo taken during the attack. The Liberty calls for backup. US jets are scrambled, but the White House calls them back. When the aircraft fly off, Israeli fast attack boats approach, firing 5 torpedoes. A photo of the battle. The Liberty is severely hit, but miraculously, the ship does not sink.
When some of the lifeboats had been launched into the sea, the torpedoes came up and started shooting them out of the sea. Now, this is something in a war situation you are not supposed to do, but it adds to the evidence that the intention was that everybody should be killed on that ship and there should be nobody left to tell the story.
To this day, Israel maintains the attack on the Liberty was a mistake. They say they thought the ship was an Egyptian horse freighter. The US Navy arrives to rescue the crew. 34 sailors were killed and 172 were injured. Even now, the survivors are convinced the Liberty was intentionally attacked.
The real reason was that the Americans had wanted the ship sunk. That the reason for unmarked planes and so on was that the world would assume that it was the Egyptians that had done it, and that therefore the Americans would have an excuse to attack Egypt.
Peter Houman has found evidence pointing to a joint American-Israeli plan. They show that shortly before the attack, 3 jets on board of the aircraft carrier USS America were loaded with nuclear bombs.
When they thought the Liberty was sinking, the Americans had planned and set in motion an attack by 3 fighter bombers that took off from an aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, where the 6th Fleet were based, on Cairo with thermonuclear weapons.
Witnesses on board the aircraft carrier confirmed that the jets were loaded with armed nuclear munitions, and they took off towards Cairo, according to Houman's research. Israel denies that version of events. It says there was never a secret plan with the Americans.
President Johnson, over the hotline, informed the Soviets. One of our ships has been attacked, and we're taking measures to find out who did it and to take action if necessary against them. Whether they were nuclear or not is again something that people have imputed, but I don't think has been actually documented. One would have to think, whom would you drop those weapons on?
Peter Houman thinks the intended targets would have been military bases in Cairo. The Liberty was meant to be the pretext for defeating President Nasser in a war.
There's absolutely no doubt from the research I did, talking to people who actually saw these planes with the nuclear weapons launched, that this actually happened. About 2 or 1.5 minutes before they were due to detonate these bombs, they got over Egyptian soil when they were called back.
At that point, the United States military forces were already on alert.
Before the attack on the Liberty happened, all the nuclear defense shield of the US, which consisted of bombers standing on the runways all over the world, actually, ready to launch an attack on the Soviet Union, all that was in place, ready to launch an attack.
The US military commanders had planned ahead, globally. Among the possible targets for American bombers in the event of a nuclear war were the Soviet Union and China. The People's Republic should not be left to profit from a US-Soviet war. That is the inhuman logic of the Cold War. Did President Johnson really act so ruthlessly? The most important documents on the Liberty attack remain classified today. Until now, the superpowers had always been portrayed as helping to de-escalate conflicts in the Middle East, but apparently they were driving forces in the background. Israel and the United States have been close allies since 1967, despite or because of the Liberty. 2 years later, Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir and US President Richard Nixon reach a clandestine agreement.